For this early morning sky, the first thing I'm going to do is wet down both sides of my paper. And the reason I do this is because it gives me a lot more time to work wet into wet and get soft edges. And when you're painting a sky, you generally want soft edges. So the first thing I'm doing here is painting the lightest area of my painting first. Like most watercolors, I'm going to paint this from light to dark. So first, I'm using a little quinacridone gold and some raw sienna. In the center area of the sky is going to be the brightest part of the whole painting, so I have to remember that. And as I work around this area, I need to get stronger and stronger with my mixture of paint. And as I move on up, I'm adding some burnt sienna into the mix. And the idea here is to get darker and darker as I get away from that lightest area of the sky. And notice how I'm working from the wet edge of where I painted. I don't want any hard edges. Even though I wet down the paper, you can start to see that the paper is already drying. And as the sky goes up, you see some cooler colors. So I'm using some lavender, with a little bit of cerulean, and some cobalt teal blue. And I'm finishing up the bottom part of this painting with some of the other colors I've already mixed together. There's some warmer colors near the top of the sky that mix together with some of the cooler colors. I'm carefully working back down around the brightest part of my painting. Before this dries, I'm getting a thicker mixture of paint on my brush of some dark, cooler colors. Now, this is when I'm using more paint and less water. If I use too much water, it's going to cause a bloom, and it's going to mess up this wash that I'm already working on top of. So I'm carefully adding in some dark clouds, and I'm trying very much to not overwork this. I'm trying to vary my brush marks as I make these clouds, and I'm using my reference as a guide, but I'm not trying to paint just like my reference photo. If I try to paint every detail of these clouds, I'm gonna fail. I'm trying to get the general feeling of the atmosphere into my painting. So finally what I'm doing, as the paper is just a little damp still in this lower area, I want to add in a little more value to make sure that where the sun is coming up here, this bright part of the painting is especially bright. And the only way I can do that is by putting a little bit darker values around it. So I'm carefully, on this damp paper, adding in some darker values around that brightest area. And a few last touches up in the dark parts of this cloud. This area is still damp, and I'm still making sure that I have more paint on my brush than water. A few little touches here to vary my brush marks. So that's it for the sky. Here's what it looks like once it dried, and here's what it looks like when I painted the rest of the painting. So I hope you enjoyed this little sky demo. I hope you found that useful. If you are interested, I do have a Patreon account, and I post a new full-length tutorial every single month. So follow that link in the bio if you're interested, and I'll see you next time.